I would like to call the Board of Education meeting number 3, September 11, 2007 to order. Phyllis, can we have roll call, please?
Mrs. Boger,
Here.
Ms. Nahabidian. Here. Mr. Sambar. Mrs. Wagner. Mr. Krikorian.
Here. Before we go into the next item, the Pledge of Allegiance, obviously we know today's an important day to all of the United States and Americans, September 11th. And I'd like this moment, if we could take, before we go into the Pledge of Allegiance, if we could take a moment of silence as a board and as a community to send our love and respect to our fellow citizens and soldiers abroad in Iraq and Afghanistan. Now we're going to begin our meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance, and we're blessed and honored to have with us Courtney Casanova here with us, a fifth grader from La Crescent Elementary School. And Courtney, you could approach the podium and you could tell us about your school and, of course, lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance today. Thank you, Courtney. Thank you, Courtney, and thank you, Ms. Bishop. At this time, approval agenda order. And I have a couple amendments to there to pull consent item number 1 to action item 1A, which is the discussion of the minutes, and consent item number 10 as an action item, number 1B, which was the security contract with SB. Was the 2 items to be pulled out?
Move approval of the agenda with the corrections as noted.
All those in favor signify by saying aye. Yeah. 10 goes to 1B. It'll be 1B an action item. And all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed signify by saying nay. Okay, and agenda order is approved. And actually, I forgot to do certification of compliance to accommodate requirement of Government Code Section 549454.2 in accordance with the Brown Act. Revisions to this agenda has been posted in the bulletin board in the Administrative Center 72 hours prior to the meeting. Thank you. Now we're on to our agenda, and we're on to presentations. And Dr. Escalante, we're on to the Sunrise Rotary Club. Is that the first item up on the agenda?
Thank you very much, President Krikorian. It's a real pleasure to welcome the folks from the Sunrise Rotary, because I have a certain vested interest as a member of the Sunrise Rotary Club. If there ever was an organization that was the little engine that could, it's the Sunrise Rotary Club. It may not be the largest service organization in the community, but I have never seen a service organization that works so hard and so intensely to do good things in the community, from the projects that involve raising funds for our Hoover Band to projects of supporting kids that go over to the Museum of Tolerance, which is a huge project, to this most recent project of a donation.
Extraordinarily generous offering. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you to Captain Sloan. We all appreciate the support for all the organizations. All those opposed signify by saying nay. Action item 1A passes. Now we're on action item 1B, which is awarding bids to security guard services at various sites. And Dr. Escalante?
Thank you, President Krikorian. Each year around April or May, we send out to the schools an evaluation instrument that deals with the services, our security services, outside contractors. And what we do is we ask them how have things gone over the period of the last year. And they make comments, and we follow up with those comments to address the issues that they bring up. Many years what we've done is we've chosen just to extend the contract and renegotiate, change some of the costs, but the contract has moved on. Well, this year we looked at it because those concerns and complaints that came from the principals had really grown to a level that really needed to be addressed. So a decision was made to actually go out through a bid process to determine whether we needed to look at a new contractor. And a great deal of time was spent at developing the process, because the process, we wanted to make sure that it wasn't just based on the lowest price, but we wanted to make sure that there were other services that were going to be provided to support those people that are working in the field for the security firms. So it involved a price, it involved a questionnaire, and it actually involved an interview process with each one of the companies that made the bid. As a result of that, and the principals were intimately involved in that selection process, there was a definite feeling that another company was better able to serve our needs. It's called SP Security. So they were selected, and they are being recommended tonight. Please understand this is, even though the contract says it is a multi-year contract, and I had a chance the other day to sit down with the SP, the security firm that won that contract, I explained to them, may say 3, 4, or 5 years, but the contract really is for 10 days, because the contract clearly stipulates that at any point in time we're unhappy with your services, we give you 10-day notice and we move on to another contractor. So we feel a lot better, and I think we got a better response from the contractor, because they clearly understood that we really mean business when we want service. There were concerns about phone calls that were not being answered, people who weren't properly qualified in the past. So we've set the bar pretty high, and we want to find out whether this firm can answer the call. I asked Dr. Price to be here. In fact, I've asked him to make a few comments, and then any questions that you might have, we'd be happy to follow up on.
Thank you, Dr. Escalante. Dr. Price?
John?
Yep.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here and talk a little bit about the process that Dr. Escalante just went through and explained to you. The questionnaire that we put together for this was based on some of the concerns that some of the campuses had in regards to supervision, in regards to how guards were acting, in regards to those type of issues, response time. All of those were issues that were brought up in the questionnaire, and also as we went through the interview process, those type of issues that dealt with service were of particular interest as we went through, and each company that went through we asked a series of questions to. Within the interview process, we had assistant principals from each of the high schools. Hank Paz was there, Mike Livingston was there also. We had district personnel. We had a police officer from Glendale PD there. We had a sheriff's officer from LA County Sheriff also participating in the process. And clearly, SB was the company that answered those questions the best, responded well, and showed that they were ready to provide the service that the school district needed. So I feel very confident about the process. We are sorry that the firm that we've worked with for 17 years was not selected, but it's time to move on. And our school principals clearly stated that this is what we need to do in order to get better service.
Thank you, Dr. Price. Questions or comments? Colleagues, Ms. Wagner?
Do we know whether some of the employees from Armed Guard may continue as employees of this new company, or?
We've asked that question.
We've asked that question. There are a few guards, of course, that are very dear to some of the schools that are there, and I'm sure that there will be ways to do that. There are some possibly contract provisions that Armed Guard has with their employees that will or will not allow that. All we can do is supply information about guards that are well loved, and we really can't do much more than that than just pass on that information.
Thank you, Ms. Wagner.
Other than
Mr. Sandberg?
Other than the need to change after 17 years, could you give us some insight let me backtrack.
Sure.
Clearly, there are a number of questions that surround this issue. Clearly, this board was not involved in any input on this issue. Clearly, from the communications that have occurred over the last few days, there are many questions. My view is that we need to backtrack and be more clear and more specific. I would like to know more about this company that you're recommending. I trust you implicitly, but I don't want to be asked to vote on anything without being given the background. I don't think it's fair. So with all due respect,
Wait a minute.
I would like to amend the motion and say that this item be returned for future action. Thank you. And I would welcome a
I'd like to
second-
respond, Mr. Sambar.
I would like
Let
to
me
second the
finish.
motion, please, if there is a second. If there is no second, then you
Is there a
just
second?
go ahead.
He has a motion on the floor first, so we need to address his motion first.
Okay, let's,
Are you going to second his
Let's-
motion? Anyone seconding it?
I'll second it, I just want to continue the
All right,
conversation.
yeah, well, there'll be
on it.
conversation, so there's a second to the motion? Okay, so you have a second to the motion that you asked to table this to one more meeting? Okay, now the questions or comments regarding Chakib's amendment?
I'd like to hear what Dr. Escalante has to say.
This item was pulled off the agenda already once because there was fear that there wasn't enough information, enough research done on this project. Okay, probably 2 weeks ago, Scott, 3 weeks ago?
Yes.
I personally went out and spoke to every single one of the principals that has done business with our security companies because I was concerned about the issue. How many times